Good morning. We are live. I'm joined today with Ethan Edwards, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities that are in front of us now as learning and development professionals, and get some of Ethan's insights that he's uncovered teaching and designing a number of courses that we have available through the Allen Academy. Thanks so much for joining me, Ethan.
Well, thank you, Christopher. It's a real pleasure to have this chance to share some of the things that we've discovered with interested parties. So looking forward.
Cool. So let's jump in. I've got a couple questions that might bring us towards an interesting conversation, and as we're moving along, we'll decide which ones are interesting or not. And certainly, if you're watching us live, a comment or two about something that you might want to be answered would be helpful. Okay, so here we go. The first one. You've been teaching through the Allen Academy some interesting lessons in a course on storyline. And I'm curious, as students are entering in the program, what do you find is the biggest challenge or hurdle that they're looking to overcome? Is it the creative design, or is it learning the features and functions of the tool?
What a great question. And it's not as easy as you think, and it sort of depends whose perspective you're looking at it. I would say that an awful lot of people that are faced with creating their own e-learning as a designer are completely stymied by the idea of using the technology. And so to many people, it's the biggest challenge is, how do I use this tool to create anything? And so that's sort of a roadblock that keeps people from thinking creatively. In truth, though, the tools are much more accessible than I think people believe them to be. And what we found that we're teaching, actually for the first time in the many years we've been doing this, we have a tools class that's coupled very closely to a design class. And so we are teaching storyline, how to do some of the things that are a little unexpected, but the things you need to do to create elevated interactions. And I think our learners are coming into it with a great deal of trepidation, but leave very empowered and realizing, this isn't so bad. One thing that some of my clients and students rib me about is I often will say, whatever it is, you're building a multiple choice question. And it's a lot of, it's how you use the media, how do you craft it in a way that it doesn't feel like that. And so in a way, I think I'm removing that curtain, and people are realizing that, yeah, indeed, these are just the same little pieces that you have to work with, but not being bound by sort of our preconceptions of this is what a multiple choice looks like, this is what a true and false looks like. But realizing those are just gestures, and you can combine them in any way to achieve the designs. And so I think in the long run, people realize they get the idea of interactivity, but it's a skill that you never completely master. I've been doing this for 30 years, and every time I keep realizing there's a new way to design something, a new insight. And so I think this is a great way to get people on that path, but and continue to become more creative in their designs forever, and to get that fear of the tool, of the features and functions that they don't quite understand, to put that aside and realize, that isn't the monster I thought it was, that I can really figure out how to put things together. So that's really been, I think, one of the great places of satisfaction, I guess, as we've been rolling out this, the first real program within the Allen Academy, the Allen Certified Instructional Professional. We've run several cohorts through now, and it really is a great cumulative feeling to realize, this works. And people really change the way that they are approaching their work.
Cool. Let's talk about some of the experiences that you've had with today's new rapid authoring tools. Everybody in that particular field and technology keeps adding more and more. Are there real new design opportunities that have come up, or is it mostly window dressing? What do you think?
Oh, I think, well, it's a combination, of course. And window dressing isn't completely terrible, because I often think part of really great design is making something very simple appear to be complex.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of how you use the media. How do you create a expectation that I'm doing something really interesting, and balancing it with the fact that I, as a designer and developer, I have to do things pretty straightforward and simple because I've got 10 or 20 lessons I've got to develop in the next few months. And so getting that balance is really important. I do think that people are, either by necessity or by seeing that what our preconceptions are not true, is that it used to be that if you want to do anything out of the ordinary, I think we always thought, well, I got to get a programmer. It's going to have to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be you go to a Flash program, and now it's you go to an HTML5 programmer to develop anything that's not page-oriented and very much contained questions. I do think as we're able to become masters of some of these really mainline tools that are, honestly, they're pretty great. Storyline, when you get into it, it's astounding how much it can do in a very simple interface. And almost entirely by using the states of objects. You don't even have to program things linearly. Creating those triggers is something that I found that almost everybody can get their head around. And suddenly, it's within the realm of possibility that somebody who has never really done computer programming before or even been technical can have an idea and bring it to reality. And so I think that's a great opportunity that the field should feel really good about. And I see the first signs that it's really taking hold of people's approach. And people are realizing just putting PowerPoint slides on and putting some test questions afterwards isn't good enough. But they're seeing a way out of that, rather than, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, that was a feeling of despair. It's like, well, I can't do anything else. There's no other possibility. And now people see that there are paths that are achievable for everybody to do pretty cool interactivity.
I bet with the students that you've been working with that have been in the industry for a while and have felt that despair with the tools that they're using, that some of these insights have been maybe not life-changing, but caused a lot of delight.
Oh, indeed. Just really great aha experiences. I had no idea it was that simple to do. But of course, now that I see it, it is just those little pieces that are put together a little different way. And suddenly the world is open to you. So it really is gratifying to be providing, well, I'm sure anybody in any training field feels this, and it's sad that it's so rare. But when you know that what you just taught somebody made a huge difference, and it will change every day of the rest of their life.
So good segue into new pressures and challenges. When we were at ATD ICE this last year, standing in front of a board, they had a nice infographic of what were the big pain points and challenges for L&D professionals, and they were kind of all over the board, from things go, I need to go faster, I don't have access to students, it's hard to get a hold of subject matter experts, I'm always under pressure of keeping things to budget. Are there maybe more discrete or new challenges that you've uncovered as part of your mentorship? Yeah,
I don't know if they're new exactly, but what's the statement? There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, these are things that we have always struggled with, but I think these are things that have taken a very much stronger role in how people approach training, or how organizations set expectations. One is that things just have to be faster. That the time from inception to rollout has to go faster. That people are looking for months or even weeks rather than half of a year as sort of a time to get something out. And I know that a lot of organizations have already sort of unrealistically had those expectations, but I do not think now we have there's a greater possibility of succeeding by developing things early, because of the tools, because of also this expectation that we're getting away from so much media development it isn't so much of creating all these videos, but creating interactions. And that dispenses with a lot of the tedious and really time-consuming creation of content, even writing. And one of the worst things in my career that I just can't stand is when you're doing a review of a product and it turns out about spending hours talking about where periods go. I am a champion of punctuation and grammar and everything, so I'm not advocating to be sloppy. But this idea that that's where our work should be, and we're going to improve learning by editing. I can tell you, no e-learning ever got improved in a way that a learner cared about by being proofread. And instead, I think we have pressures to really focus on what the learner is doing. How are they being challenged, and how do we create those stimulations and games? What are new pressures? Trying to make them more game-like, which I think often is a cop-out term that people say out of desperation. Just be grabbing at straws and think I have to make it more interesting. But I do think people have gotten over that superficial idea of let's make a game board and make it colorful and let you pick a character as what is gamification. And indeed, now thinking much more about how do I create this world that has its set of rules that by my working through that sort of on my own and learning by experience is a really, really powerful way to change performance. And so I think there's pressures in that direction too. And again, not so much, I think we've left aside some of here's a game to here's a opportunity that learners are going to respond to as positively and as engagedly as they I don't think that's a word, but
I wonder if that first push towards games wasn't in response to we've been going through so many PowerPoints with the quiz at the end. Just give me something better. And when a extrinsic game or something really superficial also didn't have the same type of effect or had a similar end result as PowerPoint with the quiz, if we haven't come cycle again and looking for something more powerful.
Right. And I think when they found out that those superficial games actually turned off learners, that was a learning lesson too, that realized it just can't be, learners aren't dumb. Learners know when they're being conned and when they're being fed nonsense. And that's why they turn off. It isn't that things are necessarily bad, it's that they're not being respected as learners and as thoughtful people with something to contribute to the learning situation.
They quickly develop strategies when it's not in their favor.
Yeah, it's amazing how a learner is going to be more determined to bypass any controls you put in if they're motivated than you could possibly put in to stop them from avoiding work. So that's an approach that's going to fail. So instead, we need to do what we were talking about. Create simulations, create really engaging worlds that are irresistible, and that people willingly spend time on.
So you did kind of my next question here. You did a pretty cool webinar with Ellen Sprint Johnson recently on how to make VILT more tolerable. And can you talk a little bit about your views on blended learning and how these things fit together? Because you've been doing interesting things, I think, in the academy that is VILT, but the off hours or the homework hours are different. And I'm wondering what sort of insights you've uncovered.
Yeah, I think one of the big flaws that people carry with them when they initially try to do VILT is to think, I am limited by what I can do right here in this moment. And certainly there are tools that will make the teaching better. Polls, they're sort of, this is sort of like the gaming thing is, if I have an interaction, it'll engage people. But learners know when these polls are just the teacher saying, I've got to have an activity every 5 minutes, and so here comes the poll. But it is really true that you do need to have engaging activities at a regular rate. But it has to be real. It has to be authentic to what you're talking about. But what we talked about, I think that was maybe not heard so often, is just the necessity to reach out beyond what you're doing right there in the moment to engage the learner outside of the sessions. There's a huge amount of really great content on the internet that you can make assignments to go and watch these YouTube videos, or to create your own YouTube video and post it that would be your way of teaching this thing. Doing field trips within your organization and gathering evidence that then you're going to present and that we can talk about at a later session. So I think it's just essential, and it's really good to realize that blended learning so traditionally is a classroom activity blended with an e-learning module. Well, blending means combine as many relevant sort of activities as you can think of. And so I think when we think about blending VILT, you want to think about how best you can create small group activities, either in breakout rooms during the session, or giving people assignment to get together in Google meetups or something during the downtime to work together to come up with a problem. Even creating some, it sounds grade schoolish, but it can be so effective. Create a couple workbook pages that people need to complete. That'll force some thinking between the times that you're together. Because practice is just as important as it can possibly be. And it's hard to get practice right during the middle of a VILT session.
Sure.
So you're going to use blending. And we try to do this in the Allen Academy a lot. We have brain teasers and programming assignments in the Design 102 class, which is about using tools. We have a lot of design activities, picking things from your own work style, or little hypothetical problems that people need to work on and come back with a prototype that they share. It's really great to see the work that people show up with, and that time they spend outside of class is really valuable.
Maybe just one or two more topics.
Sure.
I think you've got a huge following in the L&D community, and you have been speaking for a lot of years. Talk a little bit about, new struggles. Are there any new struggles? Are we hitting our heads against the same brick wall over and over and over again, or has the environment changed in some way?
Well, it has changed in a way, and I think the struggle is to accept it as change. I think the field of education is so tradition bound that we continue trying to do things long after we know they're no longer useful. We've known forever that telling, ATD has a whole conference, telling a teaching. That just delivering content is not the way learning happens. And yet, that's still the preponderance of how instructional designers go about doing their work. I think people are finally buying into that in a way, and so there's a struggle now to really release some of those old sort of rule-bound approaches. And so then the struggle is how do I forge a new way of designing? We use the SAM process a lot, which, it isn't as at odds with ADDIE as I think one could make it sound. But there are a couple very critical differences that are life-changing. And one is don't storyboard. That's not a design methodology. That's a documentation methodology. And so, let that aside and do prototyping, do sketching, do rapid versions of your ideas. And I think that's a struggle, not because it's that difficult, but to let go of the comfort of what we've done in the past and realize that these, you hear a lot about agile project development. That's very much taken over the software industry. And SAM, the successive approximation model, which we also talk about quite a bit in the Academy program, and we're going to be offering some electives that are specifically about using SAM. But that is sort of an agile process too, and it's recognizing that things are moving faster, things change faster, and we require more reliable output. And so that requires early evaluation, a lot of feedback, full team involvement, and things like having access to a subject matter expert. That's going to have to disappear because subject matter experts have to be involved in a rapid process because you don't have time to become a master of your own, of all the content. And so those kind of things, I think, are struggles that people just have to think a little bit differently about their role and what kind of things they can do.
Well, thanks for chatting with me this morning.
Yeah.
How about a quick wrap up and pitch talking about your next set of courses through the Allen Academy? We've got a cohort for Allen Certified Instructional Professionals launching here in May.
Yeah. Hey,
anything new and exciting there?
Yeah, well, we're always, I guess, hopefully using our own successive approximation model of always being aware of outcomes and thinking how things can be improved. And we actually, if you've paid attention to earlier announcements, there's a little different structure to the curriculum. We've added actually a 5th course. It's what we call it Design 100. And it is really just setting the foundation for why design is so important, how e-learning in particular needs a new approach, a different approach than we have taken before. And so it's actually it's a great course as to get your feet wet. It's just 2 sessions, but it is probably the thing that so often people say, I can't believe I never knew this before. It's changed my whole perspective on instructional design. And so then we followed up with 101 and we were able, because now we've taken a little content out, we've got more space. So I'm really excited. We've got going to have a much bigger treatment of how to use media. I know people always ask questions about that, and we try to work it in, but it's never really been a formal part of the curriculum. And so talking about, when are the times to use video? How do you best create that audio and text and all, and how you balance that. And I know that, we talk about the design and the programming part. The other part that I think really stymies people is not so much the fancy media, but how do you just get basic graphics? They're not illustrators, and there's a great deal of processing of imagery and so forth. So we're going to talk about some of those issues and try to make it empowering, that you'll have more control over that. And then the other topic, we're adding another one. Now, what was that? And sort of related to that is more issues about learner interface design. We design a lot about the interactions, but of course that resides inside an interface. And designing a learner interface is different than designing a user interface. And so we're gonna have a chance to really talk about that. So I'm really pumped that we're gonna have a chance to talk about those really critical elements. And then it follows up again with the existing courses that we're really satisfied with, and the using the tools, and then really instructional design, and then the practicum. So.
And the practicum is students putting together a course that they're going to deliver to their employees, and they get time with you.
Yeah, it's really fun. Our cohort meets together to set expectations, but then each person is charged, and most people, as it's turning out, are starting to identify this even during the earlier session. So they've got their thoughts going, but they're going to build a tool or a lesson that's going to be part of their own professional work. So it's not doing some arbitrary topic that we're presenting. And so then we work in individual sessions, coaching sessions, seeing how they're doing and give advice. And then we meet as a group again to sort of share partway through. And by the end, people have, if not absolutely completed, a very, very, very good step in having something ready to go and roll out. That's
cool. Fun opportunity.
Yeah. And it's great. I mean, it's just such a great opportunity to work with individuals and deal with a wide range of problems because everybody has different challenges.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks again for joining me. This is fun.
Yeah, sure was. It's nice.
We'll have another session, and maybe we can rope in a student or two to talk about some of their insights and kind of have a back and forth.
That'd be fun.
Cool. Thanks, Ethan.
Okay. Well, thanks for all of you who joined and listened in. It's great to connect.
Yep. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.